Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. I have combined all the videos in our job board tutorial series into this single long video so that it's easy for you to follow. In this video, we're going to build this job board application from scratch using Next.js. So we will have the functionality of adding new jobs and also deleting them. We will also implement authentication in this application. And then in the end, I'll also show you how to host this online on Vercel for free. So let's get started. So we'll be using the latest version of Next.js for our application, and we will also use server actions, which are a new way to run the backend code. And then for these components, we're going to use a component library called ShadCN. And for the database, we're going to use a service called Neon. And we will use Drizzle ORM to connect to the database from our code. And then for the authentication, we're going to use a service called Clerk. And we'll write all the code in TypeScript so that we have better type safety. So first of all, let me show you a demo of how this application looks. So this is the home page. And here we can see we have these different job posts displayed over here. This is also completely responsive. So this is how it looks on a smartphone. And we also have this dark and light modes for our website. And if you go to post a job, we can see that we need to sign into our account to post a new job. And if any of these jobs that we see over here is posted by us, then we will have the option of deleting them. So first of all, I'll just go ahead and sign in. And we have these three different options. We have GitHub, Google, or email ID. So I'll just select GitHub and let's click on continue. And now we can see that we are logged into our application, and we have our user profile picture displayed over here. And we also have this dashboard button over here. And if I click on this profile picture, we have all these options. We can also manage our account, and we have the option of signing out. And here we can see that for these two jobs, we have the option of deleting the job posts. So these two are created by us. And if you go over here to dashboard, and we can see that it says my jobs, and we have these two jobs listed over here. We can also delete any of these. I'll just click on delete, and we have this pop-up. And if I click on yes, delete, then we have this toast, and the post was deleted. And if we go back to the home page, we can see that we have the updated list of jobs displayed over here. Now when we are logged in, we also have the option of posting a new job. So let's click on post a job, and here I'll just go ahead and add some test data. So I'll just type test company for the company, and let's select the job type to part-time. Let's select this to mid-level. Let's add a location. I'll just type Mumbai, India, and let's add some salary range. I'll just type 10K to 15K, and let's add some description, and let's add the URL. If I click on this publish button, we can see that we also have this validation. So here for the job description, we need to have at least 50 characters. So I'll just copy this and paste it a couple more times. And let's add a valid URL over here. So I'll just type HTTPS. For now, I'll just type google.com, and let's click on publish job. And here we can see that the job was published. And if you go to browse jobs, we can see that the test job that we just created is displayed over here. And if you go to dashboard, we have our two jobs displayed over here. So this is basically how this application works. And if I go over here and sign out, now we are not able to delete any of these job posts. So this was basically a demo of our application, and we're going to start building this from the next video. Alright, here I have created this folder called Find Talent, and I just open it with VS Code. Now let's open the terminal, and let's go ahead and type npx create next app at latest, and we'll also add a dot over here so that this next application is created inside the current folder. So let's press enter, and let's use TypeScript, and we'll use ESLint, and yes for Tailwind CSS, and no for the source directory, and yes for the app router and the turbo pack, and we'll select no for customizing the import alias. And with that, our Next.js application was created. So we can just type npm run dev to run the server. So I'll just open this localhost link. And here we can see this is the default Next.js design. Now if you go back to our project, and if you go to app and page.tsx file. This is the code that is displayed over here. So we can simply go ahead and delete everything inside this div, and I'll also delete everything inside the class name. And here I'll just simply type hello. And we can see that hello is displayed over here. Now for the UI, we are going to use a component library called ShadCN. So let's install that. So for that, you can just go to your terminal, and I'll just create a new terminal over here. And let's type npx ShadCN at latest init, and let's press enter. And for the color, I'll just choose neutral. And with that, ShadCN was installed. And if you go to components.json, we can see that this is the configuration for ShadCN. And let's also add a ShadCN component, and let's see whether it works. So let's go ahead and type npx ShadCN at latest, and let's type add. I'll just add a button, and let's press enter. And now if you go over here to the project folder structure, we can see that we have this components folder, and in that we have this UI folder, and in that we have this button.tsx file. So this is the ShadCN button, and we can go ahead and change everything inside this. But for now, let's go ahead and let's use the button over here. I'll just create an h1, and let's type hello. And here let's type button, and let's import it from components UI button. And here let's type testing. Right now, I'll just go ahead and restart the server. So let's type npm run dev. And now let's open this link. And we can see that our text and the button is being displayed over here. So with that, we know that ShadCN is installed correctly. So with that, we have set up our project. Right, the first thing we will do is we'll create a component called navbar.tsx. So let's go over here to components. Let's create a new folder called features. And in the features, we'll create a new folder called layout. And here, I'll just create a new file called navbar.tsx. And let's go ahead and type export default function. Let's call it navbar. And for now, I'll just return a header. And let's type navbar over here. Now we will add this navbar to the layout.tsx file so that we have the navbar added to all the pages in our website. So let's go over here, and just before the children, let's type navbar, and let's import it from components, features, layout, navbar. Now this is basically all the content of our page, and before that we are including the navbar. So now if we go back to our website, we can see that navbar is displayed over here. Right, now let's go back to our code, and let's go to the navbar component. Let's start designing this. Now the first thing we will do is we'll create a div, and we'll just give it some classes. So let's type class name, and let's type mx auto to bring it to the center horizontally, and let's type max w. Let's set it to 7xl. And if you go back to our website, here we can see that we have this content on the left side and this on the right side. So for that, we will set the display to flex. Let's type justify between so that both these elements are on the extreme left and right sides. Let's also type items center so that they are centered vertically, and we'll also type padding left and right of 4, and for larger screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. Now in this, we need to have another div. So in this div, we will have this logo and this browse jobs link, and also this link called post a job. So here let's use a link component from Next.js, and here let's type href, and let's set it to the home page. And for the logo, let's create a div, and let's add the briefcase icon from Zod React, and below that we'll create a span, and let's type find talent over here, and this is how it looks. Let's bring these one next to the other. So here for this link, let's type class name, and let's type display of flex, items center, gap of 2. Let's also add a transition for the opacity, and let's type, when we hover over this, we want the opacity to be 80. So this is how it looks. Now for the briefcase icon, we need to have this background. So here for the div, let's type class name, let's type display of flex, height of 9 and width of 9. Let's type items center and justify center. Let's type rounded LG for the border radius, and let's set the background to primary and the text color to primary foreground. Now these variables are located inside the globals.css file. So here we can see we have all these values over here. So we have this primary color over here, primary foreground, and all those colors are displayed inside this globals.css file. And for this briefcase, let's tap class name. Let's set the height to 5 and the width to 5. So this is how it looks. And for this span, let's tap class name. Let's tap text of Excel, and this is the font size. Let's tap font semi-bold for the font weight. Let's tap tracking tight for the letter spacing. So this is our logo. And after that, we need to have these two links. So let's go ahead and go outside the link and let's tap nav. And here let's tap link. Here let's tap browse jobs. And for the href, let's type the home page. And let's create one more link. And here let's type post a job. Let's also add some classes over here. So let's tap class name and we'll just hide it on smaller screens. And for medium and larger, let's tap display of block. Let's tap text to small, font weight to medium. And let's tap transition for the colors. And let's tap, when you hover over this, we will type text primary. So this will change the color when you hover over this. And I'll just copy this class name and I'll just paste it over here. And we'll just remove the hidden from here. We want this to be displayed everywhere. And now let's go back to our website, and this is how it looks. Now we want all of these to be displayed one next to the other. So let's go to the container. And here for this div, let's go ahead and tap class name, display of flex, items center, and gap of 8. And we also want these two links to be one next to the other. So here for this nav, let's tap class name, display of flex, items center, and gap of 6. So this is how it looks. And then on the right side, we need to have these buttons over here. Now we'll create a different component for this because we need to make this component client component because we need to add interactivity. So we'll create a different component for this. For now, I'll just add a text. So let's go outside this div and let's create a div over here. And let's type client nav actions. And here we can see we have the client nav actions on the right side. And now let's go to the main container, which is the header, and let's add some classes. So let's tap class name. Let's tap sticky so that it is always on the top. Let's tap top of 0, z index of 50 so that it's above all the other elements. Let's set the width to full. Let's add a border for the bottom. And let's set the background color to background 95. 95 is the opacity and background is the name of the color. And we'll also add a backdrop blur. So let's tap backdrop blur of small. Now if we go back to our website, this is how it looks. Let's go back to our code, and here for the div, let's add a height. Let's set it to 16. And this is our navbar. So with that, we have created our navbar.tsx file. Now here we can see in our application, we have authentication. And if I click on sign in, we can sign in with GitHub, Google, or email ID. And let's sign in. And here we can see after we sign in, we have this dashboard button over here, and we also have this user button. And if I go to dashboard, we can find all the jobs that we have posted. We also have the option of deleting them. And we also have the option of posting a new job when we are signed in. But if you are signed out, we can see that we are redirected back to the home page. And if I go to the post a job link, it says that we need to sign in. So this is how we are going to use auth in our application. Now for setting up authentication, we're going to use a service called Clerk. So just go to clerk.com and create a free account. You can also sign up with your GitHub account. So once you log into the clerk.com website, you will find this page over here. Just click on this button and click on create application. And let's name our application. I'll just call it find talent. So this is how it will look when the user goes to the sign in page. So let's go ahead and select Google and also GitHub and also email ID. So these three options are selected. So here we can see there are a lot of different options we can choose from. So I'll just choose these three and let's click on create application. Now here we need to select which framework we are using. So let's select Next.js, and these are the instructions. So first of all, we need to install Clerk. So let's copy this command. Let's go back to our code. Let's open the terminal, and here let's paste the command. Let's press enter. Right, it is installed. Let's go back. And the next thing we need to do is add the environment variables. So let's copy these Let's go back to our project and let's create a new file called .env. Now this is where we can store all our secrets. So let's paste the clerk secrets over here. Right now the next thing we need to do is we need to create this middleware.ts file. So let's copy this code. Let's go back over here and in the root of our project, let's create a file called middleware.ts and let's paste the code over here. And let's go back and the next thing we need to do is we need to wrap everything inside this clerk provider. So let's go back and let's go to the layout.tsx file, and here before the HTML I'll just type clerk provider, and we have imported it from clerk Next.js. So let's go ahead and cut the ending tag and paste it down here, and let's go back and let's see what else we need to do. And that's basically it. Now we also need to add custom sign-in page. So for that, let's click on this button, continue to the Next.js guide, and let's scroll down, and here we need to create this file inside this folder. So we need to create a catch-all route. So this is basically a catch-all route. So I'll just copy this from here. Let's go to the app folder and let's paste it right here by clicking on this new file button. And we can see that the folders and the files have been created. Now let's go back and let's copy this code. Let's paste it over here. So this is our sign-in page. Now we'll create one more component over here. So let's go to the UI folder and let's create a new component over here called container.tsx. And we will use this component for adding a max width and some other styles so that we will not have to copy the same code a lot of times. So I'll just type export default function container, and we will accept children inside here and class name, and for the type let's type container props, and let's create this type over here. So let's type container props, and let's set it equal to an object with children with a type of react.react node and class name, and this is going to be optional. So let's type question mark and it will be of type string. So we're going to get the children and class name inside here, and here let's go ahead and type return, and let's return a div, and in that we will use the children, and container props should not be inside curly braces. Right now let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name and let's type mx auto to bring everything to the center horizontally. Let's type max width of 6 XL, padding left and right of 4, and for smaller or larger screens let's type padding left and right of 6, and for larger screens let's type padding left and right of 8. And we'll also get class name from here, so let's add that as well. So for that we're going to use a utility function called cn. So let's add all of this inside curly braces, and here let's type cn and let's import it from libutils, and let's add all of this inside parenthesis. And here we need to type comma class name. So this will also append the extra classes that we pass to this component right here. And whatever we add inside the container will be displayed right here. So now this is a reusable container. So let's close this and let's use that over here. Let's type return. Let's type container over here. Let's import it from components UI container. And let's add the sign-in component inside this. And let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, margin top and bottom of 16, and let's type display of flex and justify content to the center. So now let's go to the sign in page. So let's type sign in over here. And here we can see that the sign in component is displayed right here. I think we have some extra semicolon over here. Right now it looks all right. Right now let's go back to the documentation and let's scroll down. Right now we need to update the middleware. So let's copy this code. Let's go back over here to the middleware.ts file. Let's replace this code with the new code. And now we can see that we have the option of setting public routes. So right now it is set to sign in page. So the sign in page is a public route. And let's also add other public routes. So if you go back to our website, the home page is a public route. And if we click on these titles, we can see that we have this dedicated page over here. So this is also a public route. So it is basically jobs / and this ID over here. So for that, let's go back and let's add those right here. So let's type homepage So let's add a /, and then we need to type /jobs and asterisk. So this is basically how you add everything inside the jobs route to this public route. All right, now let's go back to the documentation, and now we need to add these environment variables. So let's copy these. Let's go back and let's go to the env file, and let's paste them over here. And after signing in, we need to go to the dashboard. So let's type dashboard over here. And after sign up, we will go to the dashboard. And I think that's basically it with the Clerk setup. Right, now let's go back to our project and let's go to the components, features, layout. And let's create a new file called Navbar actions.tsx. And let's go ahead and type export default function navbar actions, and let's return a div. Let's go back to the navbar.tsx file, and let's go ahead and replace this with navbar actions. So we have imported it from the current folder. So let's go back, and here let's go ahead and type div, and in this div we will have the sign in button, but we will show the sign in button only if the user is not signed in. So we can use signed out from Clerk Next.js. So let's import it, and in this we will use the sign in button. So let's type button, and let's import it from components UI button, and here I'll just type as child so that we can use link inside here. So let's type link. Let's import link from next link, and here let's type sign in, and for the href let's type sign in, and here let's set the variant to ghost, and let's set the size to SM. And now let's go back, and we have this error. So we have the error inside jobs in the middleware. So let's go back, and we need to add a dot over here before the asterisk. So now this will work. Right, now we can see that we have this sign in button over here. Now when we are signed in, we need to display the dashboard link and also the user button. So it is also quite simple. Let's go to the navbar actions, and here let's type signed in, and let's import this from Clerk Next.js as well. And when we are signed in, let's type button, and in the button let's type link, and let's type as child over here, and for the variant let's type outline, and let's set the size to SM, and here in the link let's type dashboard, and for the href let's type dashboard, and for the user button we can simply go ahead and type user button, and we can just import it from Clerk Next.js. And for this container, let's type class name, let's set it to display of flex, align items to the center and a gap of 2. And for the main container division, let's type class name, display of flex, items to the center, gap of 3. So now let's go back, and here we can see we have this sign in button, and if I click on sign in, and let's select GitHub, and once we are signed in, we are redirected to the dashboard page. So I'll just go to the home page because we haven't created the dashboard page. So now we can see that we have the user button and also the dashboard link over here. So the authentication is working all right. So with that, we have added authentication to our application using Clerk.
Since we are using ShadCN for our components, we can just go to the ShadCN official website, ui.shadcn.com, and just go to docs, and then just click on dark mode, and then just select Next.js. And here we can see we have to first of all install Next themes. So let's copy this command. Let's go back to our terminal and let's paste it over here. And let's just enter. Right, Next themes was installed. Now let's go back and let's see what's the next step. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create this theme provider.tsx file, and we need to copy and paste this code. So let's copy this code from here. Let's go to the components folder, and let's create a new file called theme provider.tsx. And let's paste the code over here. Right, now let's go back, and the next thing we need to do is we need to add the theme provider to the layout file, and we need to add these attributes. So let's copy all of these. Let's go back to our code, and let's go to the layout.tsx file, and we need to add the theme provider inside the body. So here, let's go ahead and type theme provider, and let's import it from components theme provider. And I'll just cut the ending tag and I'll just paste it over here. Now let's go ahead and copy and paste these attributes right here. And we also need to add suppress hydration warning. So let's copy this and paste it inside the HTML. So I'll just add it over here. And that's basically it with the layout.tsx file. Now the next thing we need to do is add the button. So here we can see that we have this button for changing the theme. So now let's create this button. Let's go back to our code. And if you go to our website, we can see that we have this sign in button over here. If you go back to our Navbar component, here we can see that we have this Navbar actions, and that is where we have this sign in button. And we also want to have the theme toggle button over here on the right side. So let's go to this component. Right now, let's go ahead and go inside this div and let's create a button. And in this button, we need to have two icons based on the theme. So right now we have the dark theme. So we need to have this icon. And for the light theme, we need to have this icon right here. So let's go ahead and first of all, let's type const set theme and theme. And here we need to type use theme. So this is coming from Next themes that we just installed. And now we also need to change this into a client component. So for that, let's go back over here and at the top, let's type use client. So now we can see that we don't have the error. Now here, let's go ahead and use this theme. So here in the button, let's type if theme is equal to dark, then we'll just go ahead and display the sun icon. So let's type sun and let's import it from Lucid React. Let's also add some classes. So let's type class name, height of 4 and width of 4. And here let's add an else. And here let's display the moon icon. Let's import it from Lucid React. Let's add the same classes, class name of h4 and width of 4. So now if we go back to our website, we can see that we have this icon displayed over here. Let's go back and for the button, let's change the variant. So let's type variant. Let's set it to ghost and let's set the size to icon. So this is how the button looks. Now when we click on this button, we need to change the theme. So for that, let's add an on click. And here I'll just go ahead and type set theme. So when we click on the button and if the theme is dark, we need to set it to light. So let's type if theme equals dark, then set it to light, or let's set it to dark. So this is the code for it. We are telling that if the theme is dark, set it to light, or else set it to dark. Now let's go back and let's see whether this works. So let's reload this page. Here we can see that we have this button displayed. Let's click on this button. And now we can see that the theme has changed to dark theme. And now if I click on this button once again, we can see that the theme has changed to light theme. So everything is working all right. So with that, we have added the option of dark theme to our website. Now before starting with the footer, we can see that we have this error over here in our application. And if I reload this page, we can see that we have this hydration failed error. Now that error is being displayed because the server and the client have two different HTMLs. So here we can see we have this mismatch. Now to fix the error, you have to go back to our code and let's open Navbar actions. So this is where we have the sun and moon icons. So what we will do is we will display this button only after everything has loaded in our page. So for that, we can just go ahead and simply create a state called mounted. And let's type set mounted for the setter function. And let's type use state. Let's import it from React. And by default, we will set the state to false. And now what we will do is we will use a use effect. So let's type use effect. Let's also import it from React. And in this use effect, I'll just go ahead and create this arrow function. And for the dependencies array, I'll just type an empty array. So this will run the first time this page loads. Now here we can simply go ahead and set the mounted state to true. So we can just go ahead and type set mounted and let's set it to true. And now here for this button, we'll just make sure that the button is displayed only after the mounted state is set to true. So let's go ahead and type mounted and let's type ampersand ampersand. And I'll just remove this ending curly braces and I'll just add all of this inside parentheses. So let's add this button inside the parentheses and let's add the ending curly braces over here. So now this button will be displayed only after the page has completely loaded. So let's go back and let's reload this page. And now we can see that we don't have any errors. So now we can go ahead and start with the footer. Now for the footer, let's go ahead and create a new component. So let's go to the layout folder, and here inside the layout folder, let's create a new file called footer.tsx. And I'll just go ahead and type export default function footer, and let's type return. For now, I'll just return a footer tag. Let's type footer over here. Now we'll just go ahead and add this footer to the layout file. So let's go to the layout.tsx file, and here after this children, let's go ahead and type footer. So let's import it from components, features, layout, footer. So now if you go back to our website, we can see that the footer is displayed over here. So let's go ahead and create this footer. So let's go back to our footer component. Now for this footer, let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's type border T for the border top. And here you can see we have this border top. And let's also set the background color to BG muted 50. 50 is the opacity. So this is the background color of the footer. Right now, let's use the container component that we created. So let's type container, and let's import it from components UI container. And in this container, let's create a div. And in this div, we will have 4 different columns. So this is the first 2 columns, and this is the third one, and this is the fourth one. So in this way, we have 4 different columns. So this first section will span 2 columns. So let's go back and let's type class name. Let's set the display to grid. Let's add a gap of 8 between the elements. And for medium or larger screens, let's type grid calls to 4. So this will have 4 columns for larger screens. And for smaller screens, it will have just 1 column. So this is how it will look on smaller screens. Right now, let's go ahead and create another div. And in this div, we will have an S3. And let's add the text. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. Right now, let's create a paragraph, and I'll just copy this paragraph and I'll just paste it over here. So here we can see we have the content. Now let's add some classes to this as well. So for the div, let's go ahead and type class name, and we want this to span 2 columns. So let's type MD for medium or larger screens, and let's type call span of 2. So this will span 2 columns. And for the S3, let's add some classes. So let's type class name, margin bottom of 3, text of large, and font weight to semi-bold. So this is how it looks. Right now for the paragraph, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's type text size to small, text color to text muted foreground. Let's also add a max width. So let's type max W of MD. Now for this container, let's add some classes. Let's type class name, and let's set the padding left and right of 4, and padding top and bottom of 12. And for larger screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. And this is how it looks. Right now, let's create another div for this section. So let's go outside this div. Let's type div. And let's create an H4. Here, let's type company. And let's create a UL. And that will have list items. And that we have link. So let's type link, and let's import it from next link. And in the link, let's add these links. So let's type about us, contact, and careers. So let's type about us. And let's add some classes to the links. First of all, let's add some classes to the S4. So let's type class name. Let's type margin bottom of 3, text size to small, and font weight to semi-bold. And for the unordered list, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's type space Y of 2. So this is the spacing between the elements vertically. And let's set the text size to small. Right now for the link, let's add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's type text muted foreground for the color. And for the transition, let's type colors. And when you hover over this, we need to set the text color to foreground. So this is how it looks. Now let's add the 2 other links that we have over here. So we have contact and careers. So I'll just copy this link from here and paste it 2 more times. And for the second text, let's type contact. And for the third one, let's type careers. So with that, we have completed this section. Now let's create the next section, which is this one right here. So we can just copy and paste the same thing. Just copy this div from here. And let's paste it down here. And for this one, we need to type legal. So here for the heading, let's type legal. And for the links, let's type privacy policy, terms of service, and cookie policy. So let's type privacy policy, terms of service, and cookie policy. And now if we go back, we can see that the footer is displayed correctly. So we don't have any problems. And let's take a look at the smaller screens. And this is how it will look on a smartphone. So it is completely responsive. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to add this text and also these 3 social media icons. So let's do that. Let's go back to our source code and let's go outside this main div. And let's create another div. In that we'll have a paragraph. And let's copy the copyright symbol from here. So I'll just copy everything and paste it over here. Now here, instead of the year, I'll just go ahead and type curly braces, new date, get full year. So what this will do is it will get the current year and add it over here. So here we can see how it says copyright of 2025. Let's go ahead and add some classes over here as well. So let's type class name, text small, text muted, foreground for the color. Now for this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class name over here. Let's type margin top of 8, display of flex, flex call for smaller screens, and for medium or larger screens, let's type flex row. Let's type items center and justify between so that the elements are to the extreme left and right sides. Let's add a gap of 4, and let's add a border top. Let's type padding top of 8. So this is how it looks. Right now, let's go ahead and add these social media icons. So let's go back and let's go outside this paragraph. Let's create a div and let's add links. So in this link for the href, let's go ahead and type /. You can add the links of your social media pages over here. And for the content, let's go ahead and type LinkedIn and let's import it from Lucid React. So here we have the LinkedIn logo. And we'll also set the target to _blank so that it will open in a new tab. Let's also add some classes. So let's type class name, text muted foreground, and transition colors. And when we hover over this, we'll change the color to text foreground. And for this div, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's set it to display of flex, items center, and a gap of 4. And for this LinkedIn, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's set the height to 5 and the width to 5. Right now, we can just go ahead and copy and paste this link 2 more times. And for the second one, let's change this to Twitter. And for the third one, let's change this to GitHub. So with that, we have the social media icons displayed over here. And everything is working all right. Let's also take a look at the smartphone screen. So this is how it will look on a smaller screen. So with that, we have completed designing the footer of our website. Right, before getting started with the hero section, let's go ahead and change this title over here and also the description. So let's go ahead and go to the layout.tsx file. Now here you can go ahead and change the title and the description of your page. So here I'll just go ahead and change this title to find talent. So this is the name of our application. So here we can see that it has changed to find talent. And I'll just change this description. So here I'll just type find your dream job. Right now, let's get started with the hero section. So what we will do is we'll go to the components folder, and inside the features, let's create a new folder called homepage. And in that, we'll create a component called hero.tsx. All the components of the homepage will be inside this homepage folder. So in this way, our folder structure will be maintainable even if we have a large project. So here, let's go ahead and type export default function, and let's type hero. And for now, let's return a section, and let's type hero section. And let's go ahead and add this component to the page.tsx file. So here, let's go ahead and type hero and let's import it from components, features, homepage, hero. And here you can see we have the hero section displayed over here. Let's also delete these two elements. So this is our hero section. Now let's go ahead and go to the hero component and let's start creating the component. So what we need to do over here is that we need to create an h1, and in this h1 we'll just go ahead and type find your dream job. So let's add that over here, and then let's go ahead and create a paragraph, and let's copy this text and let's add it over here. Right now let's go ahead and add the styling. So here for the h1, let's go ahead and type class name, and let's add some classes. Let's type text 3XL for a larger text, and for medium or larger screens let's type text 5XL, and for even larger screens let's type text 7XL. So this is our text. Let's also make the font weight to bold, and let's type margin bottom of 6, and let's also type tracking tighter so that we have less letter spacing between the elements. So this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and style this paragraph. So for the paragraph, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's type text size to LG, and let's type text muted foreground for the text color. And for larger screens, let's type text XL for the font size. Right now let's go ahead and create a container div, and let's add all of this inside the div. And for the div, let's add some classes. So let's type class name, and let's type max width of 3XL. So 3XL is basically 768 pixels. And let's type text center to bring all the text to the center. And let's also type MX auto to align everything to the center. So this is how it looks. Now here we can see that we have this text, but the first line is too long and the second line just has 2 words. So for that we can use this CSS property called text balance. And now we can see that we have the correct balance of words inside this text. Right now let's go ahead and add all of this inside the container. So we have already created this container component. So let's import it from components UI container, and let's delete the ending tag and let's paste it right here. Right now for the container, let's also add some minimum height. So let's type class name. Let's type min h, and let's set it to 400 pixels. So in Tailwind CSS, you can add custom values by just adding these square brackets over here. And now we can see it has this minimum height of 400 pixels. Let's also bring everything to the center. So let's type display of grid and items center. So now we can say everything is in the center. Let's also add a background linear gradient. So let's type bg linear to b, which means that it should have a linear gradient which goes from top to bottom. And for the top, let's type from muted 50. So this is the top color. And for the bottom color, let's type to background. So background is also a color. So this is how it looks. Now we can see that for the container, we already have a max width. So here we can see that this color is not spanning the whole width of the screen. So let's go ahead and remove the background color styles from here, and let's add it to section. So let's type class name and let's paste it over here. So now we can see we have the correct background color over here, and with that we have completed styling the hero section of our website. Now in this video we will design this post a job form. So here you can see if I click on this link, we have this form displayed over here. We have the heading, subheading, and then we have this job posting form, and then we have this button over here, and this is basically a new page. So we're going to create this page, and we're going to create this form component, and we're going to use ShadCN for creating this form component. So let's get started. So you can just go to the ShadCN official website, ui.shadcn.com, and go to docs, and here we can just click on forms, and we're going to use React Hook Form. So let's click on this, and this is the documentation of creating a form. So let's go back to our VS Code, and let's install some dependencies. So first of all, we need to add the field component from ShadCN. So let's go ahead and type npx ShadCN at latest add field. And let's also add the other components that we need. For example, we need the input field, we need the select field, and also the text area and the button. So let's also install these. So I'll just type npx ShadCN at latest add input, select text area. We'll also use the card and button and input group. So let's press enter. If we go back to the documentation, we can see that we also need to install Zod for the validation. So here we can see that Zod is being used for the validation. So let's also install that. And we also need to install React Hook Form. So let's install both of these. Let's go back over here, and button already exists. So I'll just press no. Right now, let's go ahead and let's tap npm I, and let's tap add hook form resolvers and React Hook Form, and also Zod, and let's press enter. But now that we have installed everything, let's go ahead and start with creating the schema. So let's go to the lib folder. Let's create a new file called validators.ts. And here, let's go ahead and first of all, import Zod. So let's type import asterisk as z from Zod. And let's create a schema. So let's type export const job from schema. And we need to set it equal to z.object. And here we need to provide the shape of the object. So we need to have the title. So here we can see we have the title, company name, and all these things over here. So we need to add all of these inside the schema. So for the title, we need to set it to z.string. It should be a string, and it should have a minimum value of 3. So it should be at least 3 characters long. And here for the error message, let's type title must be at least 3 characters. And then for the company, let's go ahead and type z.string, and it should be minimum 2 characters. And let's add an error message over here. Or the next thing we need to have is the job type. So let's type job type, and it should be z.enum. So we will have some set values over here. So we'll just type full time for one of the values, and the second value should be part time. And this all should be inside an array. So let's add all of this inside an array. And then we need to have contract and also internship. So these are the options that we need to have inside job type. Then we have location, and for the location, we need to have a z.string, and it should be a minimum value of 2. And let's type location is required. And let's go ahead and type experience level, and it should also be a z.enum. And we should have the following values. We need to have entry level, then we need to have mid level, and then we need to have senior, and also manager. Right now we need to have the salary, and for the salary, we need to set it to z.string, and it should be optional. So let's type optional over here. And then we need to have the description. So the description should be string, and the minimum value should be at least 50 characters. So let's type description must be at least 50 characters. And then lastly, we have application URL. So let's type z.string. It should also be a string, and it should be a URL. So let's type URL. And if it is not a valid URL, we just type must be a valid URL. So this is basically our job form schema. And we can use this in our form. Let's also export the job form values from here so that we can use it directly inside the form. So here we can see, if we scroll down to the form, so let's go to build the form. Here we can see that we are typing z.infer type of form schema. So let's go ahead and export this from our validator itself. So let's go ahead and type export type job form values equals z.infer type of job form schema. So now we can directly use this job form values to validate all the inputs. Right now, let's go ahead and create a new page. So let's go over here to the app folder, and let's create a new folder called post job. And in that, we'll have a file called page.tsx. Now here, let's go ahead and tap export default function post job page, and let's tap return post job. So now if you go to the post job URL, so let's tap post job. Here we can see that we have this sign in prompt because post a job page is protected. So let's log in. Right, so here we can see that I have logged in, and we have the post job page displayed over here. Now let's go to the components folder, and let's create a new component for the form. So let's go ahead and go to features. Let's create a new folder called job. And in that, let's tap post job form.tsx. And let's go and tap export default function. Let's tap post job form. And let's return the form. Let's tap hi for now. And let's use this post job form inside here. So let's tap post job form. If you go back to our website, here we can see hi is being displayed over here. But now let's go back to the documentation and let's copy some code from here so that it's easy for us. First of all, let's use a card component for the form. So let's go to the post job form and here, let's add all of this inside a card. And we need to import card from UI card. Now in the card, we need to have a card content. And in that, we will have the form. Below the card content, we will have the card footer. And this will have the buttons. So let's go back to our documentation and let's copy some code from here. So let's copy this form. And let's paste it right here. And we need to import all of these. So let's go back over here and let's import the necessary elements. So we need to have the input group, input, and we need to also have the field and also the card. So let's copy all of these and let's paste it right here. And let's see what else we have. So we need to import the controller. So the controller is basically from React Hook Form. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. Right, the next thing we need to do is create this form constant. So if you go back to the documentation, here we can see that they are creating this const called form and that we are using use form, which comes from React Hook Form. And it makes it easy for us to manage forms. So here we can see that we are validating the input using the form schema. So let's go and copy this code from here and let's paste it right here just before the return. And here, instead of form schema, we have already created the job form values instead of zinfer. So if we go back to validator, here we can see we are exporting job form values. So let's use that. So I'll just go ahead and delete all of this and we will use the type that we exported. And here itself, we are using zinfer. So let's go back and here let's type job form values. And then we also need to import Zod resolver. So let's click on quick fix and let's import it from hook form resolver Zod. And let's type job form schema over here. We are importing that as well from validators. Right, now the next thing we need to fix is this on submit. So we need to create a function called on submit. So let's do that. Let's type function on submit and we get some data. And for the data, we'll check whether the values are the same as job form values. So here let's type job form values. And here I'll just go ahead and console.log the data. So I'll just type data over here and let's type data. So this will display the data that we submit to the console. Later, we'll go ahead and write the code to insert this to the database. And now we can see that we don't have any errors. Now we also need to change this into a client component. So let's type use client. So now let's go back to our website and this is how it looks. So we have these two input fields. Right now let's go back to the page and here let's add a container so that we have some max width. Let's import it from components UI container. And now we can see we have this max width. Let's type class name and I'll just change the max width a little bit. I'll just type max W of 4 XL. But this looks all right. And let's also add a heading. Let's type div and here let's type class name, margin bottom of 8. And in this div, let's go ahead and create an h1. Let's type post a new job and let's add some classes. Let's type text 3XL for the size and margin bottom of 3. Let's also create a paragraph. Let's copy this from here and let's paste it right here. And let's add some classes. Let's type text size to LG, text color to muted foreground. Let's also type font semi-bold. Let's also add a margin top. So here let's type empty of 12. Well, now let's go ahead and add these form fields to our form. So let's go to the form component. And first of all, let's add the default values. So I'll just go ahead and copy this from here. So these are the things that we need in our form. And let's paste them over here. And let's add the default values. So I'll just type empty string for all of these. And for job type, let's select full-time by default. And for locations, let's type empty string. And experience level, let's type senior by default. And for salary, let's type empty string. And for the description also, let's type empty string. And for the application URL, also let's type empty string. So in this way, we have added the default values. Now let's scroll down, and here we have the form elements. So first of all, let's change the form ID name, and let's change this to post job form. And here in the form footer, let's also add the buttons. So let's go back to the documentation. I'll just copy these buttons from here and let's paste it over here. Instead of submit, let's type publish job, and let's import button from UI button. And here also we need to have the same form name. So let's type post job form. Right now let's update these input fields. So first of all, we need to have the job title. So I'll just keep the name as title. And here for the field label, let's type job title. And for the ID of the title, let's type job title. Let's update that over here as well, job title. And for the placeholder, let's type example, senior front-end engineer. And I'll just remove autocomplete from here. Now the next thing is the company. So I'll just copy this controller. Let's paste it down here. And here for the title, let's type company. And here for the HTML4, let's type company. Just the company name over here. And here also, let's type company name. And for the ID, let's type company name. And for the placeholder, let's type example tech corp or something like that. Now let's copy and paste this controller once more. And for this one, we need to have the job type and also the experience level. So we need to have both of these side by side. So I'll just add this inside a div. I'll just cut this ending div and paste it down here. So this one is gonna be the job type. And here for the field label, I'll just remove this, and here let's type job type. And here instead of the input field, we need to have the select component. So let's delete this and let's type select. Let's import it from components UI select. And in the select, we need to have a select trigger and also select content. So let's type select trigger. Let's import it from components UI select. Let's open the documentation of select and let's see how it works. So let's search for select over here. And here, if you scroll down, this is how the select works. And the select trigger, we need to have a select value and we need to have a placeholder. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. Let's import it from components UI select. Here, let's type select job type. And for the select, let's go ahead and type on value change. Let's go ahead and type field dot on change. So this will update the value according to the selected element from the drop down. And let's also add a default value. Let's set the default value to field dot value. But now we need to have the select content. So below the select trigger, let's go ahead and type select content. Let's import it from components UI select. And here we need to have select item. Let's import it from components UI select. And in this, we need to have the value. Let's set the value to full time. And here also, let's tap full time. So now if we go back here, we can see that we have full time over here. So let's add the other values as well. So just copy this and paste it down here 3 more times. Here, let's change this to part-time. And here also change this to part-time. Here, let's type contract. And here also, let's type contract. And then we have internship. Here also, let's type internship. But now we can see that we have all these values selected over here. And by default, we have full time because we are adding that over here as the default value. And for this div, we'll just go ahead and add some classes. Let's type class name. Let's type display of grid, gap of 6. For medium or larger, let's type grid calls to 2 so that these elements are one next to the other. Right now, let's copy the same thing. So let's copy this controller and let's paste it down here. And for the second controller, we need to change this to the experience level. So let's type experience level over here. And here for the field label, let's go ahead and type experience level. And here for the select value placeholder, let's change this to select experience level. And then we need to have the select content. So let's change these values. I'll just type entry level for the first one. Let's do that over here as well. Let's type entry level. Then we have mid-level, senior, and manager. So let's type mid-level. Let's do that over here as well. And then we have senior. Let's type senior over here. And then we have manager. Let's type manager. So now let's go back to our website. And here we can see we have the job tab. And here we have the experience level. So everything is working correctly. And the next thing we need to have is the location and also the salary range. So let's copy this div from here because we need to have two elements one next to the other. So let's copy the div and paste it down here. And in this div, let's copy input field. So these two are input fields. So let's copy an input field from here. So this is an input field. I'll just copy this. So let's copy the whole controller and let's paste it inside the div. Let's change the values inside here. So for the name, let's type location. And here for the HTML4, let's type location. And for the label, let's type location. And here also for the ID, let's type location. For the placeholder, let's add example, Mumbai. Let's type India over here. Right now, let's copy the same controller and paste it down here. And the next thing we need to have is the salary range. So let's go ahead and type salary for the name. And for the HTML4, let's type salary range. Here also, let's type salary range. And this is optional. So let's type optional over here. Here also for the ID, let's type salary range. And for the placeholder, let's go ahead and type example 100K to 150K. And now if we go back to our website, here we can see that we also have the location and the salary range. But now we need to have the description and also the application URL. Now here we already have a description, so let's update that. So this is the description. The name is correct. And for the HTML4, let's type job description. For the field label, also let's type job description. And for the ID, let's type job description. And for the placeholder, let's add something. So let's type describe the role, responsibilities, qualifications, and benefits. And let's type rows 8. And here let's change this to 50 characters. And I will also add a description over here. So let's type provide a comprehensive description. I'll just copy this and paste it over here. Right now, the last thing we need to do is add the application URL. So I'll just copy this controller from here. And let's paste it down here. And for the name, let's type application URL. And for the HTML4, let's type application URL. Let's do the same over here, application URL. And for the placeholder, let's go ahead and type https example.com/apply. Let's also add a description over here. So let's copy this and outside the input, let's type field description. Let's paste it over here. And with that, we have completed all the fields of our form. Now let's go back to our website and let's see whether it works. So here we can see everything is being displayed correctly. Let's also add a margin bottom for the form. So here, let's go to the card, and here for the card, let's have class name, margin bottom of 8. So this is how it looks. Right now, let's click on this publish job button. And here we can see we have the validation working correctly. Now for the mid-level, we have this error. So let's see what's the problem. Let's go back. And I think it's inside the validators. So here for the validators, we have small l. So we need to change this to capital L. Now this should solve the problem. So now you can see we don't have any problems. So let's click on publish job once again. So here we can see we have this validation. Let's add some details over here. And here we can see we need to add at least 50 characters. And we need to add a valid URL. So let's type https google.com. And let's open the console. And let's go ahead and click on publish. And now we can see we don't have any errors. And in the console, we have the data displayed over here. So with that, we have completed creating the post job form for our website. Now for the database, we're going to use a service called NeonDB. So you can just go to this website called neon.com and you can just sign up. So I have already signed up using GitHub. So you can just log in over here. Now here you can see your current projects, and in your case, this section might be empty. So you can just go over here to new project, and you can go ahead and name the project. I'll just call it Find Talent, and I'll just keep all these settings as it is, and let's click on create. So our project was created. Now for connecting to the database from our Next.js application, we're going to use an ORM called Drizzle. So Drizzle will be used to talk to the database. So you can just go to orm.drizzle.team and you can find all the features of Drizzle. So if you scroll down, we can see that we can connect to different databases using Drizzle. So here we can see Supabase, PostgreSQL, and we have MySQL and SQLite, and all these databases can be connected using Drizzle. And we also have these services like NeonDB and PlanetScale and so on. So let's go over here to the documentation. Let's click on documentation and let's go to the tutorials, and let's click on Drizzle with Neon Postgres. Now we're going to follow this tutorial and we're going to connect to the database. So first of all, we need to install these two dependencies. So I'll just click on copy. Let's go back to our source code and let's open the terminal, and here just paste the commands and let's press enter. Right, we can see that the packages are installed. Now let's go back to the documentation, and the next thing we need to do is install this. Let's copy this command and paste it over here. Let's press enter. And it is also installed. Let's go back. And then it says that we need to install .env. But since we are using Next.js, we don't need to install .env. So let's skip this step. Let's scroll down. And then we can see that we need to create a new Neon project. So we have already done that. So this is our Find Talent project. Let's scroll down. And we need to get the connection string. So let's go back to the Neon console. And here we can see that there's an option called connect to your database. Let's click on connect. And this is the connection string. So if we go back to the documentation, we can see that this is how it looks. It starts with Postgres, and we have all of this over here. So just go ahead and copy this. And we're going to go ahead and create an environment variable called database URL. And we're going to paste this connection string over there. So let's go back to our project. And here we have already created this env file. So let's go ahead and create a new variable called database URL. And let's paste it over here. All right, let's go back and let's scroll down. The next thing we need to do is create a file called db.ts, and we need to copy this code. So let's go back to our project and let's go to the lib folder. And here we'll create a file called db.ts. And let's go back to the documentation. I'll just copy all of this and paste it over here. Now, since we are not using .env, we can just delete this. And we'll also delete this line of code from here. This is for the .env package. Right now, let's go back to the documentation. And the next thing we need to do is create the tables. So we need to create a file called schema.ts. So let's go to the lib folder and let's create a file called schema.ts. And I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this code from here, and let's paste it over here. And here we need to create the schema of our project. But for now, I'll just go ahead and just see whether this works. So let's just keep the schema called users table, and let's go back to the documentation. Let's scroll down, and the next thing we need to do is we need to create this drizzle.config.ts file. Let's go back, and in the root of our project, let's create the file. So it's called drizzle.config.ts. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this code from here, and let's paste it over here. Let's remove the .env code from here, and also this line of code. But now if you go back to our Neon console, here if you go to tables, we can see that we don't have any tables right now. So now if you go to the documentation, and if you scroll down, we need to first of all run this command npx drizzle git generate. So this will generate the migrations. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And here we have this error called no schema files found for path config. So we need to change the config. So here we are storing the schema.ts file inside the lib folder. So let's change this to lib/schema. And let's rerun the command. Now we can see we have a new folder called migrations, and here we have the SQL command to create the table. So the migration is done successfully. And the next command that we need to run is this command called npx drizzle git migrate. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. Now if we go back to the Neon console, and if I reload this page, we can see that we have these two tables over here that we created. So we have post table and users table. And if we go to the schema, we can see that we have the users table and the post table over here. So we have successfully connected our database to our project. So we are using a service called NeonDB. Now in this video, we will create the schema of our database, and we'll also see how to get the details from our database into our application. So let's get started. Now here we can see that this is the schema.ts file. And in this we have these two tables, users table and posts table. Now these two tables are from the documentation. So let's go ahead and delete these, and let's create our own schema. So let's tap export const, and let's call it jobs table. And we need to type equals pg table, and here let's call it jobs. Now this will be the name that will be displayed over here inside the NeonDB console. Now here we need to enter all the columns. So first of all, we need to have the ID. Now for the ID, we will use UUID, and let's get it from Drizzle ORM PG core. So this is a data type, and for the name, let's tap ID, and let's add some other options. So let's tap dot default random. Now this tells Drizzle to create a random UID for each record, and let's also make it primary key. All right, the next thing we need to have is the user ID. So let's type user ID. Let's type varchar over here for the type, and let's import it from Drizzle ORM PG core, and we'll just name this user underscore ID. And let's type not null, so this value is required. And here let's also add a length. So let's type length, and let's set it to 255. All right, now let's go ahead and copy this, and I'll just paste it down, and let's change this to title, and let's change this name to title as well. Everything else is the same, and let's paste it once more. Here let's change this to company, and here also we'll just change the name to company. So these are all the fields that we see in our form. All right, let's paste it once more, and let's change this name to location, and here also let's type location. And then we need to have the job type. So let's change this to job type. And we need to change the data type of this. So this should be an enum. So for that, let's go ahead and create a const over here. I just type export const. Let's name it job type enum. And let's set it equal to pg enum. And let's import it from Drizzle ORM PG core. And let's name it job type. And here, let's add the options that we need. So let's create an array, and let's type full-time. Then we need to have part-time, and then let's have contract, and then let's have internship. Right now, let's use this job type enum down here. So here instead of varchar, let's type job type enum. And now you need to remove this length. And then we have experience level. So I'll just copy this and paste it down here. Let's change the name to experience level. Let's change the name over here as well. So let's type experience level. And we need to change the name for the job type as well. So let's type job underscore type. Right now, let's create one more enum for the experience level. So let's type export const experience level enum. Let's set it equal to pg enum. Let's name it experience level. And here for the options, let's type entry level, mid level, senior, and manager. Right now, let's use this experience level enum down here. So let's type experience level enum. And then we need to have the salary. So let's copy this location from here and let's paste it down here. Let's change the name to salary and we will keep it as varchar. Let's change this name to salary. And here we need to remove not null because this is optional. Right now, let's paste it down here and let's change this to description. And for the type, let's change this to text. Let's change the name to description as well. And this is not optional. So let's keep the not null over here. And then we have the application URL. So let's paste it down here. Let's change this to application URL. And here also, let's change this to application URL. And we can remove this length from here. And now let's add posted at. So let's type posted at. Here let's use the type called timestamp. And let's name it created at. And for the options, let's type with time zone. Let's set it to true. And let's type default now. And let's also type not null. Now this will store the date of when the user has submitted the data. So now if you go back to the documentation, here we can see that in the end, they are also exporting the type. So let's copy these two from here and let's paste it down here. And let's change the names. So here I'll just name this job. Let's change the name over here to jobs table. So this is the jobs table. And here instead of select user, let's change this to new job. And for the table name, let's change this to jobs table. So with that, we have updated our schema to work with our application. So now let's go ahead and update NeonDB. So right now we can see that in NeonDB, we have these two tables over here. So now let's go back and let's open the terminal. And here let's type npx drizzle git generate. And here it is asking, is jobs table created or renamed from another table? Let's select the first one, which says the jobs table was created. Right now, let's go back to the documentation. And here we can see we need to migrate. Right now, let's go back. And here we can see it says you can also push the changes directly using this command. So if you run this command, it will directly push it to NeonDB. So now let's go back to NeonDB console and let's refresh the schema. And now we can see we have just one table called jobs. So we can see that the schema was updated. All right, now let's go ahead and add some data. So let's click on add record. And for the user ID, for now, I'll just go ahead and type 123. For the title, let's add something. So let's go over here and let's copy this title from here. And let's paste it over here. And then we have the company name. Let's go ahead and copy this. Let's paste it right here. And then we have the location. So let's copy this and paste it over here. Then we have the job tab. So let's select one of these. Then we have the experience level. Let's select one of these. And then we have the salary. Let's copy the salary from here. And let's paste it over here. And then we have the description. So let's copy this and paste it right here. And then we have the application URL. So I'll just copy the link from here. And let's paste it right here. All right, now let's go ahead and click on Save One Change. So now we can see that this record has been added to the database. Now let's see how to retrieve this into our application. So let's go back to our code. Now to get the data, we're going to use server actions. So server actions is a new way to get data using Next.js. So for that, I'll just go ahead and create a folder called actions. And in that, I'll just create a file called jobactions.ts. Now this code will run only on server. So for that, we need to first of all type use server over here at the top. And let's create a function called getJobs. So let's type export async function getJobs. Now let's use a try catch block. And when we have an error, we'll just go ahead and console.log the error. And we'll just return an empty array. Right now in the try, let's type const jobs. Let's set it equal to await db. And let's get the db from at libdb. So we have already created this file. So if we go to libdb.ts, here we can see this is where we are creating this db constant, and we are using the database URL from the environment variable. So here we need to type db.select, and we need to type from. Here we need to type jobs table because we're going to select the data from the jobs table. Let's import it from libschema, and let's also type order by descending, and let's import it from Drizzle ORM. And here we'll just pass jobs table dot posted at. So what this will do is this will get all the jobs from the jobs table, and it will order it by descending order based on the posted at data. So the latest post will be displayed at the top, and then we'll just go ahead and return the jobs. So let's type return jobs. Right now to use this, let's go to the main page, which is the page.tsx file. And here for now, I'll just go ahead and just display it in the console. So here inside this function, let's type const jobs equals await get jobs, and let's import it from actions job actions. And since we are using await, we need to change this function into an async function. So let's type default async function, and I'll just go ahead and type console.log jobs, and let's type jobs over here. Right now, let's go back to our website and let's see whether the jobs are displayed. So let's open the console and let's reload this page. And here we can see that we are getting this in the server. So if you open this, we have the job, and all the data is coming from this table. So here we can see senior DevOps engineer, and we have the same thing right here. So in this way, we can get the data from the database using server actions. Alright, so with that, we have successfully fetched the data from our database. In the previous video, I showed you how to get the jobs from the database. So if you open the console, we can see that the jobs are displayed over here in this console log. Now in this video, I'll show you how to add this job data to a UI. So here we can see that the job data is displayed in this manner over here. So we will design this in this video. Let's get started. Right, so here's our source code, and we can see that we are getting the jobs using this getJobs function. And if you open this, we can see that this is a server action, and we are just console logging the jobs over here. Now before getting started with the UI, let's make a correction to our code. So if you go to schema.ts file, here we can see that this is jobs table.infer insert. So for the insert, we need to type new job, and for infer select, we need to type job. So this is the fix that we need to do from the previous video. Right now what we will do is we'll create a file called job feed. So let's go to components, and in that we have features. And in the features, let's go to homepage, and here let's create a file called job feed.tsx. And in here, first of all, let's go ahead and type export default function job feed, and let's return a div, and let's type job feed over here. Now let's add this to our page.tsx file. So let's go to this main page file. Now here after the hero section, let's go ahead and create a section, and in that let's create a container. So let's import it from components UI container, and in this container we'll create a div, and here let's go ahead and create an h2, and let's add this text latest opportunities. So let's copy this Let's create an h2 and add the text over here. Now let's add some classes to this h2. So let's type class name. Let's set the text size to 2XL. Let's type font semi-bold. So this is how it looks. Let's go to the div and let's add some classes over here. Let's type margin bottom of 6. After this, let's import the job feed component. So let's type job feed. Let's import it from components features homepage. So here we can see job feed is being displayed over here. Now, first of all, let's add the screen where no jobs are present. So let's go back and let's go to the job feed component. And here, first of all, let's create a const and let's call it jobs. Now let's set it to an empty array. And here is step if there is no jobs or jobs dot length is 0, then we'll just go ahead and return a div. In this, let's create an h2 and let's type no jobs found. And let's create a paragraph. Let's type there are currently no job postings available. Please check back later. And now if we go back to our website, we can see that it says no jobs found. Let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, text to Excel, font semi-bold. And for the div, let's type class name, text center, text gray, 500 for the color. Let's type margin top of 8. Let's also add some margin bottom. Let's type 8. I think we can type 16. But that looks all right. But now for the actual job cards that we see over here, we'll create another component. So let's go to the components folder and let's go to job. And here let's create a new component called job card.tsx. And here let's type export default function job card. And here we'll get the job. So let's type job over here. And the type of it will be job card props. So we just create it right now. And let's return a card and let's import it from components UI card. So this is a ShadCN component. So now let's create this job card props. So let's type interface job card props and let's type job and let's set the type to job and let's import it from lib schema. So if you go to the schema.ts file, we can see that we are exporting this job type. So we are using that over here for the job card props. But now let's go back to the job feed and here when we have job postings, then we'll just go ahead and return a div and we'll just loop through all the jobs. So let's type jobs.map. Let's call each of them job and let's set the type to job. Let's import it from lib schema. And here we'll just return a job card. So let's type job card. Let's import it from job card. And here we need to pass the job. So let's type job equals job. So we are getting this job from here. And let's also pass a key because each of the items inside the map requires a key. So let's set the key to job.id. So we also get an ID from the job. Right now here for the jobs, let's go ahead and change this to get the actual jobs. So let's type const jobs is equal to await. Let's use the get jobs function that we created. So it is in actions, job actions. And since we are using await, we need to change this function into an async function. And I think we need to close one of these parentheses over here. So let's close this. Right now, if we go back to our website, we can see that we have latest opportunities displayed over here. Let's also add some classes to this. So let's type class name, display of grid, gap of 6 between the elements. And for medium or larger screens, let's type grid calls to 2 so that there are 2 columns. And let's also add a margin bottom of 16. Right now, let's create the job card component. So let's go over here. Now in the card component, let's use the card content. So let's also import it from components UI card. And in this card content, let's create a div. And let's create an S3. And here let's add the job title. So now if we go back, we can see that the title is displayed over here. So let's style this. Here for the S3, let's type class name. Let's type font semi-bold, text of large, leading tight. This is the line height. And this is how it looks. Now this should be a link. So let's go ahead and wrap this inside a link component. And let's import it from next link. So let's add this S3 inside the link, and here let's type sref, and for the sref I'll just type backticks /jobs/job ID. So let's type $ curly braces job.id. So now if we go ahead and hover over this, we can see that the link is displayed at the bottom. So we have jobs / the ID, and this way we can create dedicated page for the single jobs. So if I click on, for example, senior front-end developer, we can see the details of this job is displayed over here. So we have this dynamic page for each of the jobs. Now let's go ahead and add the company name. So let's go outside the link and let's create a paragraph tag. Let's type job.company. So now here we have the company name displayed. Let's add some classes. So let's type class name, text of small, text color to muted foreground, margin top of 1. And then we need to add this map pin icon and this location. So let's go outside this div. Let's create another div, and here let's create a div, and here we will have an icon called map pin. Let's import it from Lucid React. Let's also type class name, and let's set the height to 4 and the width to 4. And let's create a span, and here let's type job.location. So here we have the job location. Let's have the icon and the text one next to the other. So let's type class name, display of flex, items center, gap of 1.5. Now let's add all of this inside a div. So here let's create another div. Let's add it as the container. And let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, display of flex, gap of 4. And let's type flex call. So now we can see we have this space between the elements. But now we need to add the job type. So here let's create another div. Let's copy these class names from here. And in this div, first of all, let's add the briefcase icon from Lucid React. Let's class name h4 and width 4. Let's create a span, and let's type job.job type. So here we have the job type. Let's bring this one next to the other. So here for this div, let's type class name, display of flex, flex wrap, so that it can wrap to the next line, and items center, gap of 3, text of small, and text muted foreground for the color. So here we have the location and the job type. Let's also add the job salary. So let's go outside this div. Let's type if job.salary is present. Let's type ampersand. Then we'll just go ahead and create a span, and here let's type job.salary. Now we are doing this because salary is optional in our form, and if we go back, we can see that the salary is being displayed over here. Now for this, let's go ahead and change the text color. So let's type class name, text color to foreground, and font medium for the font weight. So this is the salary. Right now we need to display the job experience level and also the date. So let's go back to our code and let's go outside this div. Let's create another div. Now here we will use a badge from ShadCN. So let's type badge over here, and I think we haven't installed it. So first of all, let's install badge. Let's go to the terminal, and here let's type npx ShadCN at latest add badge. Right, we can see that the badge is installed. Now let's go ahead and use this. So let's type badge. Let's import it from components UI badge, and here let's type job.experience level. So now if we go back, we can see that the badge is displayed over here. Let's change the variant. So let's type variant. Let's set it to secondary. Right, now the last thing we need to do is we need to display the date. So here, let's go outside the badge. Let's create a span, and here let's type new date, and here let's type job.posted at. Now these are all the columns that we have inside the job table in our database. So let's type to local date string, and here let's type ENIN for the first argument. And for the second one, let's type day. Let's set it to 2-digit, and let's type month. Let's set it to short. So this is the date format. And for year, let's type numeric. Now if we go back, we can see that the date is displayed over here. Let's also add some classes to this. So for the span, let's type class name, text size to small, text color to muted foreground. And we want these two to be to the extreme left and right sides. So for that, we need to go to the container, and let's type class name. Let's set it to display of flex, items center, justify between. So now we can see that these two are on the extreme left and right sides. So in this way, we have added the job details to the UI. Now let's go back to the main page. Now we can go ahead and delete these two lines of code because we are already fetching the jobs inside the job feed component. So we are doing that over here. So now if we add more jobs to the database, it will display it over here inside this home page.
Now in this video, we will see how to create the single job page. So here we can see that we have a list of these jobs. And if I click on any of these titles, we can see that we are taken to a dedicated page for that specific job post. So we're going to create this page over here in this video, and this is going to be a dynamic page. So we just need to create this design once, and all this data will be dynamically fetched from the database. So let's get started. All right, now the first thing we will do is we'll create a server action for getting a single job. So here let's go to actions, and in actions we have job actions. So here we already have this function to get all the jobs. So down here let's create another function. Let's type export async function, and let's call it get single job. Now we need to get an ID for getting a single job. So let's type ID, and it'll be a type of string. Right now in this, let's add a try catch block, and when we have an error, we'll just go ahead and console.log the error. So let's type console.log error, and I'll just simply go ahead and return null. And when we don't have any errors, let's go ahead and fetch the specific job from the database. So here let's type const, and we get an array back. So let's store it inside a variable called job, and we'll get the first item from the array, and we'll have this variable called job. And here let's type await db dot select. So first of all we need to select, and then we need to type from which table. So let's type from jobs table, and then we need to type where. So we need to add the condition over here. So for the condition, let's type equals jobs table dot id comma id. So this means that the id that we pass over here should be the same as the jobs table id. And after that, let's type dot limit, and let's type 1 over here. So it will just limit it to one result, and here it cannot find eq, so let's import eq from Drizzle ORM. But now we can simply go ahead and return job. So let's type return job, and if you don't have the job, then we'll just return null. So this is the function to get a single job. We are getting the id from the source, and here we are just using Drizzle ORM to get the single job, where the jobs table ID is equal to this ID, and we are just limiting it to one result. And even if we limit it to 1, we get an array. So we are just getting the first item of the array and storing it as job, and then we are just returning the job. But now if we go back to our website, and if I click on this title, right now we can see that we have this 404 error because we don't have this page. So now I will show you how to create this dynamic page. So let's go back, and here we need to go ahead and create a new folder called jobs, and in that we need to create a folder called square brackets, and we have to name the variable over here. And then we need to create a folder with square brackets and the variable name, and then we need to type page.tsx. So this will be the file. So here we can see we have this jobs folder, and in that we have this folder with this name, square brackets, and slug, and in that we are creating this page.tsx file. So whenever we have this type of URL, this ID that we send over here will be passed to this page. So let's go ahead and type export default function, and let's call it job page. And here we get params. So let's type params, and let's set the type to job page props, and let's go ahead and create this interface. So let's type interface job page props, and it'll be params, and it'll be a promise, and in the promise we get an ID with a type of string. So this will be the job page props, and since we are getting a promise, we need to change this into a async function. Now we can just type const, and we get the ID from the params. Now here we have named it slug, but I think it'll be better for us to name it ID because we are passing the ID. So I'll just change this to ID. Alright, now we can just go ahead and simply destructure ID from params. So let's type await params. Let's type return, and I'll just go ahead and see whether we are getting the ID. So let's type h1. Let's display the ID in the page. I'll just type class name. Let's type text 3xl. Let's go back. Right, now let's go back to our website, and now let's open this link. And now we can see that we are getting this ID over here. So the URL params are being fetched correctly. So let's go back and let's get the details of the job from this ID. So for that, we can simply go ahead and use the job action that we just created, which is get single job. So let's go ahead and type const job equals await get single job, and let's import it from actions job actions. Let's pass the ID over here. And now all the details of that job will be stored inside this job constant. Now we can simply go ahead and display the details over here. So first of all, I'll just change this to a container. Let's import it from components UI container. Now for the job details section, which is this section right here, we'll just create a separate component. So let's go to components and let's go to features, job. Let's create a new component called job details header.tsx. And here let's type export default function, and let's call it job details header. And in this we need to get the job. So let's type job over here. And for the type, let's go ahead and create an interface. So let's type interface. Let's call it job detail header props. And for the type, let's type job is the type of job. So let's import this from lib schema. So we have already exported this type job from the schema. So let's use that. And here let's type job details header props. Right now let's return a div. First of all, for this div, let's type class name border B for the border bottom, and BG muted with 30 opacity for the background color. And let's import job details header inside our single job page. So here, I'll just remove this ID and let's type job details header. And here let's pass the job. So let's type job equals job. Right now it is complaining that job can be null. So let's go back to the job details header, and here I'll just type or null. Right now let's type something over here. Let's go back to our website, and here we can see the content is displayed over here. All right, let's go ahead and design this job details header. Now the first thing we need to have is the h1. So let's create a div. In that we'll create an h1. Let's type job dot title, and below that let's create a paragraph. Let's type job dot company, and here we can see we have the title and the company displayed over here. Let's also add some styling. So let's type class name, margin bottom of 2. Let's type text 4xl, and for larger screens let's type text 5xl. Let's also type font bold. Here let's go ahead and add some padding. So let's type padding top and bottom of 12. Right now let's style the company. So let's type class name. Let's type text size to XL, text color to muted foreground. Right now we need to add the job location, the job type, the salary. So let's create a div for that. Let's go down over here and let's type div. And in this we will add the icon and the location. So for the icon we will use map pin icon from Zod React. Let's type class name h5 with 5, and after that let's type span, and that we will add the job location. And here for the div, let's go ahead and type class name, display of flex, item center, and gap of 2. And let's create a div around these sections. So let's type div. Let's cut this ending tag and paste it right here. And here let's go ahead and type class name space y4. So now we can see we have the spacing between these sections. Now for the text color, let's change the color of all these text. So let's type class name text muted
foreground. Right now, let's copy this and paste it down here and here. And for the second one, let's change the icon to briefcase from Lucid React. And here, let's change this to job type. So now you can see we have the job type displayed over here. And here for the container div, let's set it to display of flex and flex wrap so that the elements can wrap down if there is less space. Let's add a gap of 4 items center. And for the salary, we need to display it only if we have it. So since the salary is optional, we'll just go ahead and first of all check whether salary is available. So let's type curly braces job dot salary ampersand ampersand. So if we have the salary, then we'll just type span, and here let's type job dot salary. Let's type class name, font semi-bold, and the color to text foreground. So here we have the salary. Right below that, we need to display the date and also the experience level. So let's go back. Let's go below this div. Let's create another div, and let's use a badge from ShadCN. So you can import it from components UI badge. And in here, we can just type job.experience level. Let's set the variant to secondary. So now we can see here we have the badge with the experience level. Right now, let's display the date. So for the date, I think we can just copy it from the job card. So I'll just copy this whole thing from here, and I'll just paste it below the badge. Right now here it says job is possibly null. So I'll just type job ampersand ampersand over here. So now if you go back, we can see that the date is displayed over here. Let's add some gap between these. So here for the div, let's type class name, flex wrap, item center, gap of 3. All right, now the last thing we need to do is add this apply button. So let's go outside this main div over here, and let's create a div. Let's type button. Let's import it from components UI button, and here let's type apply now. So here we have the button, and we need to have this button on the right side. So here, let's create another container div, and let's paste the ending tag over here. And here we will type class name, flex, justify between. And here for the button, we need to add the link of the job. So if you go to the schema, here we can see that for the jobs table, we have this application URL. So we're going to use this. So let's add this inside a link. Let's tap link over here. Let's import it from next link. And for the button, let's tap as child. So it will act as the link. And here for the href, let's type job.application URL or empty string. And here I'll just tap apply now. So now we can see we have the apply button and we have the link displayed on the bottom left of the screen. Let's also add this icon for the button. So after the apply now text, let's type external link. Let's import it from Lucid React. And here let's type class name, h4 width 4. Right now the last thing we need to do is add this job description. So let's go back to our source code. Let's create a new component called job description.tsx. And here let's type export default function job description. And here also we get the job. So let's type job. And for the type, let's type job description props. Let's create that over here. So let's type interface job description props. Here let's type job is a job. Let's import it from lib schema. And here let's type return. And let's use a card from ShadCN. And for the card content, let's type h2. Let's type about the role. Let's type class name. Let's type margin bottom of 4. And let's create a paragraph. Here let's type job.description. And here let's type class name. Let's type text color to muted foreground. And let's add that to the page. So we have job description. Let's add that over here. So I'll just go ahead and create a section. In that, I'll just create a div. Let's type job description over here. And here I'll just pass the job. Here let's type job. And here also we need to change this to job or null. And let's add a question mark over here. All right, now let's go back to the page. And for the section, let's type class name. Padding left and right of 4, padding top and bottom of 12. And for large screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. And let's style the H2. So here for the H2, let's set the font size to, let's try 2XL, or let's try 3XL. And let's type font weight to semi-bold. So with that, our job description is also being displayed over here. So with that, we have created the single job page. So if I click on this job, we go to another page where we have the details of the job displayed over here. Now we have already created a page called post a job. We haven't linked it over here. So let's go back. And if you go to our source code, we can see that we have created this page called post job. So let's add the link to this button right here. So it is inside the Navbar. So let's go to components, features, layout, Navbar. And here I'll just change the link to post job. So now if you go back to our website and if I click on this link, we can see that we have this page opened where we have this form which we can use to insert a new job into the database. So right now, if I just click on this publish job button, we have the validation added over here. Let's add some dummy data. And let's click on publish job. And right now nothing happens because we haven't added the functionality. So let's do that in this video. Let's go back to our source code. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to create a server action. Now here we are adding all the server actions inside this job actions.ts file. So we have it inside the actions folder. So let's open this and let's create a new function over here. Let's call the function create job. So let's type export async function create job. Now in this function, we will get some data. So let's call it job data. And for the type, let's give it a type of job form data. And let's create that over here. So here, I'll just type job form data equals new job. And we already get that from lib schema. And what we need to do is we need to omit the user ID, the ID, and the posted at, because they are generated over here inside our function. So for that, we can just type omit and add all of this. And here we can type the fields. So let's type user ID, ID, and posted at. So this is our job form data. Let's scroll down. Right now, first of all, let's go ahead and get the user ID. So let's type const user ID equals await auth. So this is a function from Clerk. So we're going to use this function to get the user ID of the currently logged in user. And let's go ahead and type if the user ID is not present, then we'll just go ahead and return success to false. And let's also send an error. Let's type unauthorized. And now if we have the user ID, then we will proceed. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to validate the data. So let's type const. Let's call it validation equals, and we need to validate this job data. So we're going to use Zod for the validation. So let's type job form schema, because we already created this validators inside this validators.ts file. So this is the job form schema. And here, let's type dot save parse, and here we need to pass job data. Now this will store the result of the validation in here. So now let's go ahead and check whether we have any errors. So let's type if exclamation validation. So if we have any errors, then we'll just go ahead and type return success false. Let's set the error to invalid form data provided. Right now, if you don't have any validation errors, then we'll just go ahead and simply store the data to the database. So let's use a try catch block for that. And if you have any errors, I'll just go ahead and type console.log error, and I'll just type return success false. Let's set the error to fail to create the job. And here in the try, let's go ahead and type await db, and this db is coming from libdb. We already imported it over here. So let's type db dot insert, and here first of all we need to enter the table name. So let's type jobs table, and then we need to type dot values, and in the values let's pass the data. But we have already validated the data over here, so our data is inside validation, and in that we get dot data. So here we need to type validation dot data, and we'll just spread everything inside the data. So we can just type dot dot dot, and we also need to pass the user ID. So let's type user ID over here. But now we are getting this error over here in values. So let's see what's the problem. Now here we need to check whether the validation was successful or not. So here we need to type validation dot success. Right now the error goes away. Now once the data is inserted to the database, let's go ahead and use revalidate path so that the page reloads after the data is inserted. So let's type revalidate path, and let's add the home page over here. And here I'll just go ahead and return success to true. Right now we need to use this function create job inside our post job form component. So here if you go to post job page, here we are using this component called post job form. So let's open this component, and this is where we are writing the code for the job posting form. So here we can see that we are using this on submit. We need to change the code inside the on submit function. So here we have the on submit function. Right now we are simply going ahead and showing the data in the console. So what we will do is we will use a try catch block over here. And if we have any errors, we'll just go ahead and console.log the error. And here in the try, let's type const, let's call it response equals, let's type await, let's call the function that we created called create job. Let's import it from actions, job actions, and let's pass the data that we get over here. Now since we are using await over here, we need to change this function into an async function. But now let's go ahead and check whether we have success in the response. So let's type response dot success, and if the response is successful, then we'll just go ahead and form dot reset, which will reset the values of the input fields. And let's add an else we just go ahead and display an error message. Let's go ahead and use a toast to display the error messages and the success messages. So for that, we're going to use Sonar from ShadCN. So let's install that. So you can just go to ui.shadcn.com and search for Sonar. So this is a simple toast we can use. So to install this, we need to go ahead and type npx shadcn at latest add Sonar. Let's copy this and paste it over here and press enter. And here to add this, we need to first of all add it to the layout.tsx file. So let's go back to our source code and let's go to the layout.tsx file, and I'll just fix this typo. Let's scroll down, and here after the theme provider, I'll just type toaster. Let's get it from Sonar, and now we can use the toaster. So let's go ahead and use it over here. Here, if the data insertion is successful, then we'll just go ahead and type toast from Sonar dot success. Here let's type your job has been posted successfully, and in the error let's go ahead and type toast dot error, and let's type response dot error over here. Or if you don't have that, then we'll just go ahead and type an error occurred, and here in the catch let's go ahead and type toast dot error. Let's type an unexpected error occurred, please try again. And I think that's basically it. So let's see whether this works. Let's go back to our website and let's add some data over here. So let's type test company, and let's keep this as full-time senior, and let's test location. Let's add some salary range, and let's add some description over here, and let's add the application URL. Let's click on publish job, and here we can see it says your job has been posted successfully. So it seems that our data is inserted into the database. So let's go to the home page, and here we can see that our data is indeed displayed over here. We have the test job post, we have the test company, the test location, and the salary range that we just posted. Let's open this. Let's click on this title, and here we can see that the details are also displayed correctly. And if I hover over apply now, we can see that the link is also being displayed correctly. So with that, our job insertion functionality is completed successfully. Now in this video, we will create the dashboard page. So right now, if I click on this dashboard button, we can see that we have this 404 error because we haven't created this page. And in the dashboard page, we will display the job postings of the current logged in user. So right now we can see that we have these 3 different job posts, but all of them are not posted by the currently logged in user. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a dashboard page where we're going to load the jobs of the currently logged in user and display them over here. So let's get started. Right here, I'm in my source code, and the first thing we will do is we'll create a server action for that. So let's go over here to actions, job actions, and let's create a new function over here. Let's type export async function. Let's call it get my jobs. And here, let's type const. Let's get the user ID from await auth. So this is basically getting the user ID of the currently logged in user. So this auth method is from Clerk, which we have imported over here. And if there is no user, then we'll just go ahead and return an empty array. But now let's create a try catch block. And if we have any errors, then we'll just go ahead and console.log the error and return an empty array. And in the try, let's go ahead and type const jobs equals, let's type await db dot select. So this will select all the jobs, but we need to add some other options as well. So first of all, we will type dot from. So here we will pass the jobs table. So we're going to select the data from the jobs table, and here we're going to add a where. So here we will add the condition. So let's type equals. So here we will type jobs table dot user ID is equal to the user ID that we get from here. So this means that the jobs of the current user will be fetched. And let's also add an order by so that we can order it by descending order. So let's type descending, and here let's type jobs table dot posted at. So the latest jobs will be displayed at the beginning. But now let's go ahead and return jobs. So with that, we have created the server action for getting the jobs of the currently logged in user. Right now, let's go ahead and create the dashboard page. So here, let's create a new folder called dashboard, and that will create a new file called page.tsx. And here, let's go ahead and type export default function. Let's call it dashboard. Here, let's go ahead and return a container. Let's import the container from components UI container. Now in this, we'll create a component for displaying the user jobs list. So here in the components, let's go to features. Let's create a new folder called dashboard. In that, we'll create a component called user job list.tsx. And here let's tab export default function, user job list. Let's return a text for now. Let's go back to the dashboard page. And here let's import the component. So let's tab user job list from components features dashboard. So now if we go back to our website, and if I go to the dashboard page, here we can see we have user job list displayed. Right now, let's build this component. So let's go to the component. First of all, let's change this into an async function. So here let's type default async function. Now here we're gonna call the server action. So let's type const my jobs equals await get my jobs, and let's import it from actions, job actions. So this will give us the jobs of the currently logged in user. Now here, let's go ahead and remove this text. Let's create an h2 and let's type my jobs. Here for the div, let's add some classes. Let's type space y6 for the spacing between the elements. And for the h2, let's type class name, text size of 2xl, font weight of bold, tracking tight for the letter spacing. So this is the heading. Now below this, let's go ahead and first of all write the code where the user doesn't have any jobs posted. So let's type my jobs, which is this constant right here. And let's check whether the length of my jobs is equal to 0. So if it is equal to 0, then we'll just go ahead and type div. And in this div, let's go ahead and type you haven't posted any jobs yet. And let's add a link. Let's import it from next link. And here let's type post your first job. And here for the href of the link, let's type post job. So this is the post job page. Right now, let's add the code for if we have any jobs. So let's add colon. Here let's create a div. And here let's type my jobs dot map, and let's map through all the jobs. Let's call each of them job, and it'll be of type job. Let's import it from lib schema, and let's create an arrow function over here, and let's return a job card. Let's import it from job card, and here we need to pass the key. So the key will be job.id, and let's also pass the actual job. So let's type job over here. So now if we go back to our website, here we can see that this job is being displayed over here. If you go to the home page, we can see all these jobs are displayed over here, but this is the only job that was posted by us. So if you go to the dashboard, we can see that this single job is displayed over here in the dashboard page. Let's also add some padding over here. So let's go back to the dashboard page, and here for the container, let's type class name. Let's type padding top and bottom of 12. So now it looks all right. So with that, we have created the functionality of displaying the jobs of the currently logged in user. Now in this video, we will add the functionality of deleting a job post. So here we can see that there are 3 different job posts over here. And one of these is created by us. So if I go to dashboard, we can see that this job post called test is created by us. So we should have an option of deleting this job post. So we will do that in this video. Let's get started. Now before getting started with the delete functionality, first of all, let's make some improvements to our post a job functionality. So if I go to post a job, here we can see that we have this form, and let's add some details over here. I'll just add some dummy data. Now here we can see we have this publish job button, but when we click on this button, we are not able to know whether it is being published. So we can publish this job 2 times by mistake. So if I click on publish button, we can see that nothing happens, and we can click on it again and again. And here we can see that our job was posted 3 times because this button was not disabled when the job was being published. So now if we go back to the home page, here we can see that our job was published 3 times. So that's because we didn't disable the button when the job was being published. So if you go to dashboard, we can see that we have these 3 job posts and also this test one. So let's go back to our source code and let's improve our code. So for that, we need to go to the post job form.tsx file. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a form state called is submitting, and we get it from this form. So we are using React Hook Form over here. So what we're going to do is let's type const, and from form, we're going to get some things. So here we're going to type form state, and from that, we're going to get is submitting. So now we have this is submitting boolean, and we can use this in our button. So let's scroll down and let's go to the button. Now this is our publish button. So let's go ahead and add a new attribute called disabled, and we will make the button disabled if is submitting is true. So let's type is submitting over here, and here instead of just displaying published job. Let's display the text based on whether the job is being submitted. So let's go ahead and add curly braces. Let's tap if is submitting. Then we'll just type publishing, and let's add an else over here. Else we'll just type publish job. So this will fix our issue. So let's go back to our form, and let's add some test data over here. Right now, let's go ahead and click on this publish job button, and let's see whether the button is disabled. So now we can see that we are not able to click on this button once again when the job is being published. So now if you go back to our home page, we can see that our job was published just once. So with that, we have fixed the issue in the published job functionality. Now these jobs should be displayed as a grid. So let's fix that as well. So for that, let's go to the dashboard page, and let's go to the user job list component. And here let's add some classes. Let's tap class name, display of grid, gap of 6. And for medium or larger, let's tap grid calls of 2. So now if we go back, here we can see that our jobs are displayed correctly. And if we don't have any jobs, let's see how it looks. So here I'll just comment this, and let's tap const my jobs equals empty array. I'll just tap as any for now. Now if we go back, we can see that it says you haven't posted any jobs yet. Post your first job. So let's also add some styling to this. So here for this div, let's go ahead and tap class name, rounded LG, border, padding of 6, text center. Let's tap text color to muted foreground. And here for the link, let's tap class name. Let's set the color to text primary, and let's add an underline. So this is how it looks. Let's add a line break over here as well. So this is how it looks when we don't have any jobs, and this link is also working. So let's go ahead and delete this and uncomment this. So now we have the jobs displayed over here. Right now, let's add the functionality of deleting the jobs. So the first thing we will do is we will create a component, and let's go over here to jobs, inside components, features, job. And here let's create a new component called job actions, or let's say job action buttons dot tsx. And for now, let's go ahead and tap export default function job action buttons. Let's type return div job action buttons over here, or let's type just buttons. And we need to add this to the job card. So here we have the job card. So these are all different job cards. So here let's go to the bottom, and just before the card content ends, let's add the job actions. Now if we go back to our website, we can see that we have these buttons displayed over here. So we're going to change these buttons into delete buttons. Now for deleting the job, we need to pass the job ID. So here, let's go ahead and type job ID equals, let's type job dot ID. So we are getting the job over here into this component, and in that we have an ID. So we are using that. So let's go to this job action buttons component, and let's start building this. So here let's go ahead and type job ID, and for the type, let's type job ID is a string. Now for the delete functionality, we're going to use a dialog from ShadCN. So just go to ShadCN and search for dialog, and we can see we have this button, and if I click on this, we have this pop-up. So we're going to use this type of pop-up for deleting our post. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and install this. So let's copy this command, npx shadcn at latest add dialog. Let's run this command. Right, so the dialog component has been added. Now let's go back and let's copy the code from here. So first of all, we need to copy these import, and let's paste it over here. Let's also make this component client component. Right now, let's go back and let's copy this dialog from here, and let's paste it over here. And we also need to import button. So let's go ahead and click on quick fix, and let's click on add import from add components UI button. Right now, let's go ahead and customize this. First of all, we have this form. So let's remove the form from here. And then we have this dialog trigger. And in this, we have this button. So let's change this button to a trash icon. So let's type trash. Let's import it from Lucid React. Let's also type class name, width of 5 and height of 5. And here for the variant, we will keep it as outline. And let's type class name, cursor, pointer. And let's set the size to icon. And now if you go back to our website, we have this error label is not defined. So let's go ahead and delete label and input from here. We don't need them in this component. Right now we can see we have this delete button over here. Let's also move this button to the top on the right side. So here for the div, let's add some classes. Let's type class name. Let's type position of absolute, z index of 10, right position of 2 and top of 2. And now we need to set the position of the job card to relative. So let's go to the job card, and here for the card content, or for the card, let's type class name, relative. Now we can see we have these delete buttons displayed over here. But now when we click on this, we can see that we have this pop-up. And let's go ahead and update these details. So let's go to the job action buttons component. And here in the dialog content, here for the title, let's go ahead and type, are you absolutely sure? And in the dialog description, let's go ahead and change this to this action cannot be undone. This will permanently delete this job posting. Right now, let's go ahead and delete these two divs from here. And for the dialog footer, here for this button, we have cancel. And then we have this button for submitting. So here, instead of save changes, let's change the text to yes, delete. And I think that's basically it. So let's go back. And if I click on this, we can see that we have this pop-up. Are you absolutely sure? And we have this description. And we can click on cancel, or we can also click on delete. All right, now let's add the delete functionality. So we need to create a server action for that. Let's go back and let's go to the actions, job actions.ts file. And here let's create a new function for deleting the jobs. So let's type export async function. Let's call it delete job. And in this function, we will get an ID. So this will be the ID of the job. And here, first of all, we need to check whether the user is logged in. So let's type const user ID equals await auth. So this is basically the clerk function. And if we don't have a user ID, then we'll just go ahead and type return success equals false, and error, let's type unauthorized. And if we have a user logged in, let's type try, and let's also add a catch. And here, if we have any errors, let's go ahead and type console.log error. Let's also return success, false, error, failed to delete the job. And here in the try, let's go ahead and type const result equals await db. And this is the db that we import from libdb. So we are basically using Drizzle ORM for the database operations. So let's type dot delete, and let's add the jobs table over here. And let's add the condition. So let's type where. Here let's type equals jobs table dot id and id. So the id that we get from here and the jobs table id should be the same. And we need to add one more condition. So let's add an and over here, and let's import it from Drizzle ORM. So in this and, after this equals, let's also add one more equals. So let's type eq, and let's check whether the jobs table dot user id is equal to the user id that we get from here. So we are basically checking whether the user id and the job id are the same that we get from here. And let's add an if, and let's see whether the result dot row count is equal to 0, which means the job was not deleted. So in this case, let's type return success false, and let's add an error. Let's type job not found, or you lack permission to delete it. And if everything is all right, then we'll just go ahead and revalidate the path of dashboard. This will reload the page and also return success to true. So this is our server action. Now let's use this in our component. So we have this server action called delete job, and we need to pass the job ID. So let's go to job action buttons, and here inside the button, let's go ahead and add an on click, and we'll create a function called on delete. And let's also set the variant to descriptive. Right now, let's create this on delete function. So here, let's go ahead and type async function on delete, and let's use a try catch block. And if you have an error, we just type console.log delete failed. Let's also display a toast error, and let's import toast from Sonar. And here in the error, let's type unexpected error. Please try again. And now let's create a state called is deleting. And let's type set is deleting for the setter function. Here let's type equals use state. And by default, it'll be false. Now when we start the deleting process, the first thing we will do is we'll set is deleting to true. And in the end, let's add a finally. So this will run whether we have an error or not. So here let's go ahead and set is deleting to false. And here in the button, let's go ahead and type disabled if is deleting is true. And here, instead of just displaying yes delete, let's add curly braces. Let's type is deleting. So if this is true, if it is being deleted, let's type deleting. Or else, let's type yes delete. Right now, let's scroll up. Now here in this try, let's go ahead and type const response equals await. Let's call the delete job server action. And here, let's pass the job ID, which we get from here. Right now, if the response is success, then we'll just type toast dot success job deleted successfully. Or if we have any error, then we'll just go ahead and type toast dot error failed to delete job. And if we have an error from response, I'll just type response dot error, or else we'll just display failed to delete job. Now if we go back to our website, we can see that if we go to the home page, the delete button is displayed in all these job posts. So these two job posts are not created by us, but still we have this delete button displayed over here. So let's go back and let's go ahead and use is signed in from use auth inside Clerk. So we can just type const, and we need to get it from use auth. Let's import it from Clerk Next.js, and here we need to type is signed in. So we get this from Clerk. So if we are signed in, then this will be true. And we also need to check whether it is the right user. So what we're going to do is from the job card, we will also pass the owner ID or the user ID. So I'll just call it owner ID. Let's type equals job dot user ID. So we'll check whether it is the correct user. So let's go back to job actions, and here let's also type owner ID. And here let's type owner ID is string. So now we are getting the owner ID over here. Right now from use auth, let's also get user ID. And here we will use an if condition, and we will check whether the user is not signed in. So let's type is signed in. So when we add this exclamation, it is checking whether the user is not signed in. And let's also type if user ID is not equal to owner ID. If this is the case, if the user is not signed in, or if it is not the correct user, then we'll just return null. So now if you go back, we can see that for these two job posts, we don't have the delete button because we are signed in, but these are not our job posts. But for all the job posts that we have posted, we have this delete button displayed over here. Right now, let's see whether the delete button is working all right. So let's click on this delete button. And if I click on cancel, nothing happens. But if I click on this yes delete button, we can see that it is being deleted. And here we can see we have this alert, job was deleted. And here we can see that the job is deleted and our page has refreshed. So it is working all right. Let's delete one more job post. So let's delete this one right here. So the job post was deleted. Let's delete this test job post. So with that, the delete button is working all right. One more thing that we can do over here is that we can create a state called open, and let's type set open. Let's type equals use state. By default, it will be false. So here for this dialog, we can go ahead and type open, and here we can just set it to open. So if the state open is set to true, then the dialog will be opened. And let's type on open change. Here let's type set open. So now we can control the dialog in our code. So here, after the job is deleted, let's type set open and let's set it to false. So in this way, the dialog will be closed as soon as the job is deleted. So let's see whether this works. Let's go back and let's delete this job post. And here we can see that the dialog was closed as soon as the job was deleted. And after that, we can see that our page was refreshed. So with that, we have completed the delete functionality of our website. Now we're going to deploy this on a service called Vercel. So they also have a free plan. So you can just go ahead and sign up to Vercel on their official website, vercel.com. And you can just go ahead and deploy your Next.js applications to Vercel. Now, before deploying this, let's go ahead to our source code. And first of all, let's build this in our system and let's see whether we have any errors. So let's tap npm run build and let's press enter. And now here we can see that it has failed to compile. So we have some warnings and some errors over here. So let's fix this. First of all, we have this warning that get jobs is defined but never used. So let's click on this. So this is the line. So let's delete this. Right now, let's go to the next one, which is this one right here. So here we have this apostrophe. So we need to replace this with ampersand APOS semicolon. That will fix it. And let's scroll down. The next one is this warning where error is defined but never used. So let's also display the error over here in the console. So let's type error over here. The next one is these warnings inside post job form. So we have card description, card header, and card title. They are not used in the code. So let's remove them from the imports. Right. So now let's go ahead and try building this once again. So let's tap npm run build. Let's press enter. And now we can see that our build was successful. So we can see that everything is all right. So now we can go ahead and start with our deploy process. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to push this code to GitHub. So first of all, let's go to our GitHub account. So if you don't have a GitHub account, you can just go to github.com and create a free account. So once you create the account, you can just go over here to create new and create a new repository. And let's call this find talent. and you can choose the visibility. I'll just choose private for now. And let's click on create repository. So here we can see our find talent repository has been created. Now, first of all, we need to initialize the repository. So we need to run this command git init. So let's type git init. And then we need to add all the files and then commit. So let's type git add dot to add all the files. And then let's copy this command for the commit. And let's press enter. And now we need to go ahead and run these three commands. So let's copy these from here and let's paste it over here. And let's press enter. Now if you go back to the GitHub repository and if I reload this page, we can see that our code is displayed over here. So we have successfully pushed our code to GitHub. Now we can go ahead and add this repository to our Vercel. So here, first of all, log into vercel.com and click on add new and then click on project. And here you have to search for your project. So let's find talent. And it is not displayed over here because we haven't given the access of all our repositories to Vercel. So we need to click on configure GitHub app and we need to sign in. And here we need to click on select repositories. And here let's find talent. And let's select this and click on save. And now we can see find talent is displayed over here. Let's click on import. And the next thing we need to do is we need to add the environment variables. So you can simply go to your .env file and copy and paste all the code over here. So just quickly go ahead and do that. All right, so I have added all the environment variables. So let's click on deploy. And here we can see deployment has started. And here we can see our deployment was successful. So it says, congratulations, you just deployed a new project. So let's go to the dashboard and this is the domain right now. So you can just go over here to settings and domains and you can edit the domain over here. You can also add your custom domain over here. I'll just keep it to this domain called findtalent.vercel.app. So let's open this. Let's see whether everything is working all right. So this is our website and we have all the data already displayed over here. Let's take a look at the light and dark modes. So everything is working all right. Let's open one of these and it is also working correctly. Let's click on post a job and we need to sign in. So let's sign in. And here we have the post a job form. So now if you go to dashboard, we can see that our job posting is displayed over here. Let's post a new job. Let's tap test 3. Let's tap Mumbai. Let's add some random data over here and let's add a URL. And let's click on publish job. And the job has been posted. Let's go to the dashboard. And here we can see test 3 is being displayed over here. Let's go to the home page. And here also test 3 is displayed. And for the job post that we have posted, we have this delete button displayed over here. Let's go ahead and delete one of these. Let's delete this one right here. Let's click on yes, delete. And the job post was deleted. So everything is working all right. So that's basically how you can deploy your Next.js websites on Vercel for free. Alright, so that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.